Will you no longer take your children back to the UK?
I think it's probably too soon to tell and too soon to say. But obviously, pretty gutted about the decision. We thought it was going to go our way.
No matter how much you spin the media, charm the public, or craft a flawless narrative, the Crown always sees through it. And it never forgets. Those were the scalding words Princess Anne delivered in a rare public statement from Balmoral Estate this morning. The crisp winter air seemed to match her icy tone, cutting sharper than the frost on the Highland moors. The world was still reeling from Prince Harry's emotional reappearance in Geneva, yet Anne offered no solace, no softness. Her words landed like a royal decree, measured, chilling, impossible to ignore. Instead of sympathy, she drew on an old story, the shepherd boy who cried wolf. Anne compared her nephew's recent attempts at reconciliation to the desperate cries of a figure whose goodwill had long since run out. "We heard the alarms," she repeated, "and when no wolves appeared, we stopped listening. I fear this latest cry, even if real, comes too late." The weight of that statement reverberated far beyond her estate, echoing through the corridors of power and the nation's consciousness. For Harry, whose return to the UK had been fueled by quiet hope for forgiveness, this statement marked a public and merciless severing from the House of Windsor. It wasn't merely personal, it was institutional. A reminder that the rules of the monarchy remain rigid, unyielding, and often unforgiving. Earlier this month, Harry's London visit unfolded under the intense glare of his lawsuit against Associated Newspapers Limited. The publisher of the Daily Mail had already secured a partial legal victory against MI Group newspapers, and Harry reportedly felt emboldened, even invincible. Insiders said he viewed this trial not just as a legal battle, but as a chance to reclaim his dignity, humiliate the tabloids, and perhaps symbolically, reopen doors that had closed to him in his own family. "This was meant to be a turning point," said one legal insider. "Not just in the courtroom, but behind closed doors with his family." He submitted a formal request to meet William and Catherine before his arrival, suggesting a private face-to-face in London or Windsor. He wanted to rebuild, to bridge the gap, but the palace had other plans, and the timing told the tale. On January 16th, just a day before Harry's arrival, William and Catherine quietly boarded a royal jet to Aberdeen, Scotland. Photos later captured them visiting youth programmes near Inverness. Kensington Palace called it a long-standing engagement, but the dates made it clear a meeting with Harry would never occur. Meghan's absence was equally conspicuous. Her team cited parental duties and pre-scheduled professional engagements, yet insiders confirmed she made no formal effort to support Harry, neither in court nor in person. By January 20th, she was spotted at a closed-door wellness summit in Palo Alto, California, alongside representatives from major international venture funds. Dressed in a crisp white pantsuit with no wedding ring, her presence screamed strategic positioning. Social media exploded with speculation. The story intensified when it was revealed that the event was sponsored by a Saudi-linked tech foundation, whose founder, known only in elite circles as MS, was rumoured to be a major benefactor of Meghan's ventures. Networking? Maybe. Strategic manoeuvring? Absolutely. One former aide commented bluntly, "These are calculated moves. Harry knows it, and it's painful to witness." Meanwhile, whispers resurfaced about a woman from Harry's past, once quietly encouraged by palace insiders before Meghan entered the picture. Lady Arabella Montclair, daughter of Viscount Verdun and a St Andrews alumna from the same year as Catherine. Now 32, she had been called the English Garden Rose. A woman known for intelligence, discretion, and grace, with a deep love of horses, military tradition, and environmental work. Arabella reportedly first met Harry in 2013 at a royal charity polo event, and their bond lingered over the years. By late 2015, discussions surfaced about a possible courtship, but Harry, enchanted by the freedom Meghan represented, declined. "I want to choose love, not obligation," he reportedly told Charles. An insider later reflected, he didn't realise then that these paths weren't mutually exclusive. Today, Arabella is married to a tech sustainability entrepreneur and expecting her second child. The contrast between what might have been and the reality of Harry's Californian exile has never been more striking. The dream of escaping royal rigidity for sunlit freedom has, by 2026, hardened into something bitterly cynical. Though the palace walls may have crumbled, the control remained. And the Queen? She was gone. At public events, from global citizen concerts to Netflix appearances, Harry increasingly looked like a prop beside Meghan. His silence at the 2023 Ripple of Hope Gala, the 2024 Women of Vision Awards, and the 2025 Invictus documentary launch was noticeable. Meghan dominated red carpets while Harry stood off-centre, barely speaking, almost invisible in the glow of her media presence. A former Netflix staffer put it plainly. Charming, but clearly lost. He admitted in a private call that he used to be a man with a mission. Now he's a supporting character in someone else's show. What had begun as an act of liberation had calcified into an identity crisis. This wasn't about royal duty. It was the slow erosion of self in a life curated for optics, for performance, for image. By early 2024, the cracks had widened. Harry appeared increasingly overshadowed by Meghan's media empire, silent during press tours, absent at private brand launches. The man once celebrated as a decorated military officer, mental health advocate, and vibrant member of the royal family now struggled to recognise the reflection staring back at him. Parenthood amplified the unease. By Archie's 5th birthday, Harry grew worried over Meghan's inconsistent presence. He repeatedly asked her to scale back her travel, particularly as little Lilette, barely 3, exhibited emotional volatility. Meghan allegedly dismissed these concerns, branding them patriarchal. The strain escalated when a diamond-studded necklace arrived via private courier, labelled as a gift from a Middle Eastern client. Meghan reportedly waved it off as a promotional gesture, but Harry noticed a pattern: designer items, luxury bags, scarves, and sculptures arriving without clarity or explanation. A former estate employee said she'd smile, call it PR, but Harry knew something was wrong. Rumours swirled about a mysterious golf mogul with a penchant for financing high-profile media ventures. Multiple insiders confirmed Meghan had at least 3 closed-door meetings with his team in late 2024, including one just 20 hours after Harry's solo appearance at a Santa Barbara charity. Exhausted, red-eyed and alone, Harry requested boundaries. Meghan allegedly laughed, calling him a fragile remnant of a golden cage, the same monarchy he once defied. It was no longer a marriage, a mutual friend said. It had become a merger gone cold. By August 2025, Harry quietly filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable ethical and emotional differences. Meghan's team countered with requests for mediated reconciliation, then a photo of Lilette in a hospital gown, taken during a minor respiratory scare, landed on Harry's phone. He withdrew the motion the next morning. Court records show the initial filing was public for only 72 hours before being sealed under private custodial review. Mediation continued from September to November, overseen by a San Luis Obispo County judge. No agreement was reached. Harry stayed for the children, but staying did not heal. Every day brought clashes over bedtime routines, screen time, and even which language the children should learn first. Worst of all, the trust they once shared was gone, and it was already gone. Meghan's responses to every concern were, as Harry described in a leaked voice note, elegant gaslighting dressed in empowerment language. She told him he was paranoid, regressing into the outdated mindset of the Windsor institution, that his discomfort stemmed not from her behaviour, but from a colonised view of masculine control. By the closing months of 2025, Harry had withdrawn almost completely from public interviews, his voice disappearing from the media landscape like smoke from a dying fire. Meghan, meanwhile, was in full motion, cultivating her independent Duchess persona with precision, armed with leaked PR memos, branding guidelines, and a carefully orchestrated image of autonomy. Her narrative was clear: no royal baggage, no shared empire, just her, rebuilding the world they had once tried to construct outside the monarchy's walls. And as she moved, the crown's fragile threads seemed to fray before the world's eyes. Netflix executives quietly shelved the documentary deal, branding the project as hollow and lacking resonance. The Spotify podcast, meant to redefine royal storytelling, was pulled after only one season. Even their flagship charitable effort, the Archewell Foundation, once touted as a philanthropic beacon, was reportedly under audit for donor misallocation and discrepancies in disclosure. Harry, stripped of titles, visibility, and influence, found himself marooned in a life without a platform, without dignity, without peace. And then came the podcast Slip, a quiet moment, initially misinterpreted as a mild jab at his father or brother, but now unmistakable in its clarity. Harry's words were a revelation about betrayal. Sometimes the person you give your entire world to is the very one who believes they made you, shaping every move while quietly steering the life you thought was yours. This wasn't a public meltdown. There were no headlines, no press frenzy, just a subtle, legal and deliberate withdrawal, a silent dismantling of what had been a media-fueled dream. Then, on January 23rd, 2026, Harry stunned everyone. With calm resolve, he officially renounced his California residency, filing through legal representatives in Santa Barbara County. His declaration was seismic, not for politics, but for symbolism. He was walking away from Meghan, yes, but also from the life, illusions, and performative freedom he had once chased. Insiders revealed a flurry of quiet financial maneuvers. 3 senior domestic staff at Montecito were given early notice, luxury vehicles returned, and a private accountant reached out to Tyler Perry's team to settle partial debts accrued during their high-security Beverly Hills stay in 2020. This wasn't downsizing. This was a man severing ties with a life he now deemed synthetic. By week's end, Harry had relocated to a modest, privately leased home in Hampshire, far removed from the sprawling Santa Barbara estate. Gone were the visible security details, the entourage, the red carpet theatrics. His only announcement was a handwritten note slipped under a former staffer's door. "I lost myself, but I found a reason to start again, even if I'm alone." Buckingham Palace remained silent, but Princess Anne once again stepped forward, cool, precise, and unflinching, offering clarity over drama in remarks outside a youth equestrian centre in Perth. Asked about Harry's renunciation, she paused, then delivered words that felt like a final verdict. "We've all known a shepherd boy like that. And sadly, sometimes when the wolf finally comes, there's no one left to listen." She didn't need to name him. The metaphor alone was sufficient. Behind palace walls, however, sources confirmed that Anne had spent months in late 2025 consulting with legal advisors, quietly exploring arrangements that could allow Harry safe passage and limited child visitation if he returned to the UK. Anne, they said, was the only royal who still believed Harry might come back with genuine remorse, but even she had her limits. Geneva, she realised, had crossed them. On January 22nd, 2026, Harry appeared unexpectedly at a media ethics forum in Geneva, hosted by a private NGO investigating cross-border information abuse. There were no handlers, no press entourage. Dressed simply in a black coat, he approached the podium with a single sheet of handwritten notes, hands shaking but voice steady. "I want to say this clearly," he began, "to my father, my brother, and the institution I once ran from. I was wrong about many things. I was manipulated about others, but I still take responsibility, and I am sorry." The 3-minute clip went viral almost instantly, but it wasn't the apology that shocked the world. It was what came next. Harry revealed that an anonymous whistleblower had emailed him documents suggesting Meghan had signed a covert deal in late 2024 with a New York-based media firm, granting them partial access to royal family stories and internal insights without his knowledge or consent. Audio files allegedly captured Meghan discussing private conversations with senior royals, including Charles and Catherine, spanning 2020 to 2022. Authenticity remained unverified, but the implications were devastating. As of January 24th, the palace remained silent. No statement, no confirmation, no denial. Insiders whispered that the Queen would have seen this as a hard line drawn, not because Harry couldn't be welcomed back, but because the institution could not risk another fracture. Charles, now delegating more duties to William and Catherine, recently appointed co-chairs of the Royal Legacy Trust, appeared to support this path. Reconciliation was no longer the goal. Institutional preservation was. In the quiet Hampshire residence, far from California's sun-baked canyons and manicured estates, Harry paced alone. The silence of the house contrasted sharply with the chaos in his mind. Thoughts loud, desperate and relentless. No longer a duke in exile, nor a prince with a platform, he was simply a father, now confronted with the most agonizing decision of his life: fight for custody or step away to shield his children from another public war. Archie, 6, and Lily, 3, had already endured too much absence. Every milestone missed, every first unshared, weighed on him like chains. "He can't sleep unless he hears Lily laugh," said a former army friend. Yet being near Meghan threatened to erode his soul, leaving him trapped in a paralyzing paradox: stay and risk losing himself, or leave and risk becoming a villain in his children's eyes. From September to December 2025, court-mandated reconciliation mediation under California Family Law Code Section 3170 had attempted to prevent a drawn-out custody battle. Harry proposed a bicontinental parenting model, children educated in the UK with holidays in the US. Meghan rejected it outright, calling Britain a trauma site and insisting the children be free from the so-called legacy burden. Even after additional private sessions in Los Angeles and Santa Barbara, presided over by Judge Kimberly Malden, no truce was secured. Temporary joint custody was granted, but only under conditions. No formal return to the UK without Meghan's written consent, a consent that never came. Meanwhile, Meghan continued her global repositioning. On January 19th, just 4 days before Harry's Geneva appearance, she was photographed at the Women Who Lead the World Summit in Abu Dhabi, an invite-only forum for transnational female legacy architects. Wearing a sleek black abaya and a Cartier brooch, rumoured to be a gift from a Gulf financier, she addressed an audience of billionaires and global tech philanthropists. Her topic: the independent woman, reclaiming narrative without permission. She was magnetic, commanding attention, but it was clear her words were layered, a personal declaration as much as a public speech. Excerpts circulated online, raising eyebrows. "When you're born into silence, you think love means loyalty, but sometimes love means leaving and becoming your own sovereign." Many interpreted the line as a farewell, not just to Harry, but to marriage, monarchy, and even the traditional role of mother as it had been previously defined. Even as Meghan redefined her global narrative, shadows followed. Rumours about her Gulf benefactor persisted. The unnamed figure, whose team allegedly sent luxury items to Montecito under the guise of brand partnerships, was reportedly present at the Abu Dhabi summit. Multiple sightings placed Meghan dining privately with him, alongside 2 French executives from Maison RA Paris, rumoured to be launching a royalty-inspired fragrance line. The moves were both strategic and symbolic. Meghan seemed to be trading the Windsor name for a new global femininity, constructing a form of royalty entirely on her own terms. On January 23rd, days before Geneva, Harry reportedly received a short voice note from Meghan. Not a phone call, not a video chat, just a 37-second recording. "Please remember that what we had was beautiful in its time, but time changes us, and maybe the best way to love someone is to let them become someone else." Sources say Harry listened to it 17 times in one night, and then he packed his bags privately. Princess Anne has been the only senior royal willing to extend logistical assistance, specifically in negotiating a child visit framework that could protect the children's privacy. While allowing Harry continued access, her team reached out to Harry's legal representative on January 10th, offering limited Crown estate space for supervised reunions, likely in rural Gloucestershire or Balmoral's Western Lodge. But Anne made it clear this was not a path back into the institution. "Harry must understand our help ends where the institution begins," she reportedly said to an aide. "We protect the family name, not individual regret." The coming weeks will determine whether Harry pursues formal custody modification filings, or whether he will once again sacrifice legal power for emotional access, choosing presence over permission. But one thing is certain: The boy who once imagined escaping the golden cage has now realized he was never truly free, and his children may be the only part of this fractured saga worth saving. 3 days after Meghan Markle stood center stage in Abu Dhabi, projecting the polished veneer of empowerment and renewal, Prince Harry shattered the illusion at a quiet ethics forum in Geneva without staff, fanfare, or security. He stepped up to a microphone and detonated a truth bomb. No one expected. I was manipulated, I was monetized, and I was lied to, not just by the world, but by the person I gave it all up for. With those words, the final veil dropped. The man who once followed Meghan into a life of freedom now stood alone, publicly revealing that she had signed a secret commercial agreement with a US media firm without his consent. According to Harry, the contract was revealed to him via an anonymous email from an encrypted Proton mail account in early January. The email attached multiple PDF files and audio snippets allegedly taken from internal conversations at Fremont Media, a boutique California agency known for crisis-to-culture brand storytelling. The documents outlined a licensing agreement allegedly signed in October 2024, granting Fremont rights to narrative-based dramatizations of Meghan's royal experiences behind the scenes, psychological insights about life inside the royal family, personal reflections sourced from private correspondence, interactions, and journals, all to be repackaged into books, streaming content, and branded empowerment modules. What shook Harry most wasn't the business, it was the breach. Nowhere in the agreement was his name listed as co-signatory, and nowhere in their private conversations had she disclosed this deal. Alongside the documents came 3 audio files allegedly from 2020 to 2022, secretly recorded in the Sussex estate. They capture Meghan in casual conversation, sometimes with Harry in the room, sometimes without. Excerpts from the tapes, still unverified but widely circulated, included Kate's silence, the loudest slap. "Thanks for watching," and Charles doesn't get it. Harry will never be his idea of a son again. The firm doesn't protect you. It edits you if authentic. The recording suggested a level of media premeditation that contradicted years of public statements about privacy, family boundaries, and emotional harm. More disturbing to some listeners was Harry's own voice in the background of one clip, quietly responding, "Maybe we should stop talking like this while the kids are home." Not accusatory, just weary. Following Geneva, the media descended on Kensington Palace, eager for a reaction from Prince William and Princess Catherine, Harry's estranged brother and sister-in-law, who were named or referenced repeatedly in the alleged material. But the response was coordinated and airtight. No statement, no acknowledgement, not even a change in facial expression. In a public outing at a children's hospital in Manchester the very next day, William appeared cheerful and composed. Catherine, radiant in a deep blue coat, held a newborn baby and chatted warmly with nurses. Neither so much as blinked at questions shouted from reporters behind the palace gates. However, insiders confirmed a hardened position. The Geneva speech was a burn notice, said one senior aide. William is done. No more bridges. No more meetings. He views Harry now as compromised beyond repair. Catherine, meanwhile, is said to have described the revelations as predictable and profoundly sad, urging William to maintain the highest level of public restraint. Harry now lives under a private custodial agreement in Hampshire, the former prince reduced to a shadow wandering through memories of a life he surrendered those closest to him. Say the betrayal didn't break him. His complicity did. For years, he defended Meghan publicly, even as quiet doubts gnawed at his sense of truth. Now, with evidence on his desk and 2 children caught in the middle, he faces a choice no father should ever have to make: expose more and risk losing access, or bury the truth for peace but never reclaim his dignity. "There's nothing left of the dream," said a former aide. "Just 2 children, a broken man, and a media empire that was never really his. The gates have closed, the phone no longer rings, the whispers from the palace have gone still. And for Prince Harry, once second-born son to a future king, once brother to a would-be monarch, once husband to the world's most polarizing duchess, the silence is deafening in the quiet of his temporary Hampshire home. Harry now lives not in exile, but in the aftermath, not with regret alone, but with a recognition deeper than any tabloid headline could capture. Some roads once abandoned cannot be retraced, and some crowns once discarded do not return. On the morning of January 24, 2026, as coverage of Harry's Geneva revelations continued to spiral globally, Princess Anne stepped once more into the spotlight, not for emotion, but for clarity. At a press Q&A during a Commonwealth Armed Services roundtable in Edinburgh, she was asked point-blank whether Harry had any path back to the royal fold. She paused, then answered, "The monarchy is not a boarding house. You don't return between storms. When one chooses to exit, one accepts the consequences. We can offer privacy, but not rehabilitation." It was perhaps the most definitive institutional line ever drawn between the Windsor family and one of its own. While not cruel, it was cold. And as Anne walked away from the podium without taking further questions, the message reverberated beyond the halls of Westminster. Harry is now the boy who once lived in the palace, not the man who will return to it. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle has shown no signs of retreat. On the very same day, Harry's confessions were trending worldwide. She launched a new platform under the name Arc Legacy, a global initiative aimed at supporting resilience, equity, and empowered storytelling. The launch video, posted to Instagram and syndicated across multiple women's leadership platforms, opened with her walking through a rose garden in white, barefoot, smiling. The narration was unmistakably hers. Sometimes we have to leave behind the narrative others gave us and write the one we were always meant to live. This is not a reinvention. It's a restoration gone. No mention of Harry. Gone was any reference to marriage, royalty, or titles in her new bio. Founder, mother, builder, voice. Little is known about Archie and Lily Betts' current day-to-day lives. What is confirmed, however, is that they remain under Meghan's primary physical custody and have continued their schooling in a private Montessori-style program in Montecito. Harry, per court agreement, has remote access via weekly supervised calls and quarterly in-person visits, though only within neutral territories approved by both parties. According to one mutual friend, Harry recently declined a visit in Los Angeles, stating, "I won't see them in front of their lenses, not again." His decision reflects the tension that defined his journey, the conflict between love for his children and the media architecture built around them. In early January, Harry allegedly wrote a private letter to King Charles II. The letter was never formally delivered. Sources say it remains sealed in Harry's travel chest, but its contents were shared with one confidant, who paraphrased the final paragraph. "I understand now what you meant when you said duty is its own kind of love. I just wish I hadn't learned it too late. I do not ask to return, only to be remembered, not for how I left, but for how I tried to find my way back." Those words, though never made public, have reached ears inside the palace, but no one has replied. There will be no formal reconciliation, no balcony photo, no public handshake at a jubilee. The story, as Britain knew it, has ended, yet in the space where scandal once screamed, there is now something softer, quiet, unsatisfying. Harry remains in Hampshire. He gardens. He walks alone. He writes. Some say he's begun working on a private manuscript, not for release, but for his children. A story that begins with a boy in a palace and ends not with a return to the throne, but with a whisper, "Don't chase crowns, chase peace." As the monarchy moves forward, leaner and more focused under William and Catherine's stewardship, Harry is absent, not just from the photos, but from the institutional memory. He will not be reinstated to honorary military roles. He will not appear in the royal yearbook. His coat of arms remains frozen in 2020, but among palace staff, especially those who once served Princess Diana, his story is not forgotten. "He wasn't wicked," said one retired footman, "just wounded. Maybe he thought love was supposed to fix that. But sometimes love only shows you where the wound really is." No ceremony marked the final rift. No crown fell from his head. Only the quiet realization that freedom without clarity is just another kind of prison. And perhaps that is Harry's final lesson. Not just for his children or the world watching, but for himself. A prince who runs from duty will always be chased by it. That silence may not be justice, but sometimes it's the only mercy the crown has left to give. If you found this story compelling, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to follow more in-depth royal stories and untold truths from inside the palace.